Welcome back to another episode of What If Naruto Had a Big Brother? In this alternate Naruto universe, one small twist changes everything. What if Naruto wasn't alone? What if he grew up with someone stronger, smarter, and born to rewrite destiny itself? Today, we dive deeper into the story of Kaito Uzumaki, Naruto's powerful older brother whose existence shakes the entire Shinobi world. New alliances form, new enemies rise, and the future of Konoha may never be the same again. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because this episode is about to change everything. Kaito felt it too, in a different way. Each breath he trained, each technique he refined, was a small strike against fate. He could not bring back Minato. He could not promise to erase the past. But he could promise this: when the masked man returned, he would be waiting, and he would not be alone. Kaito walked home with Kushina at his side, the afternoon shrinking the shadows and painting the streets gold. His feet barely touched the ground, part adrenaline, part the lightness that comes after a hard, honest test. He kept replaying the spar, the way Itachi had read him, the flash of black in Itachi's eye that meant something fundamental inside had shifted. He hadn't meant to push Itachi that far, he'd only wanted a true measure of himself. Now that measure had moved. Kushina hummed softly as she steered them through a market, glancing at Kaito with that same mix of pride and worry that never left her. "You were very loud today," she teased, squeezing his hand. "And rude. But loud is good. Show them what the Uzumaki are made of." Naruto gurgled in her sling, tiny fists waving, oblivious to the weight the day carried. Kaito smiled despite himself. "Itachi's gotten stronger," he said. "He read my rhythm. I like that, someone who can teach me pace." Kushina's eyes softened. "You'll learn from everyone if you keep an open mind. Even the quiet ones like Itachi." They stopped at a stall selling warm dumplings and bought 3. Kushina made him sit on a low wall and fed Naruto a tiny taste while Kaito chewed slowly, thinking. The academy had been everything he'd expected and more: skill, rivalry, the bright, dangerous taste of potential. But beneath the buzz of pride and the competitiveness, a quiet, darker drumbeat thudded in his chest, the knowledge that training wasn't only a game. It was survival. When they reached home, Kakashi was waiting where he said he'd be, beneath a narrow maple in the courtyard, book in one hand and a small stack of exercise scrolls in the other. His single visible eye crinkled in that unreadable way whenever he assessed someone meaningfully. "You've improved since yesterday," Kakashi said without preamble. "But you look like you ran a marathon." Kaito dropped his bag, chin high. "I did. It was a good run." Kakashi flipped his book closed and gave him a rare, direct look. "You need balance. Speed without calm is disaster. Strength without patience is recklessness. I can teach you both, but you have to promise not to burn yourself out." Kaito's laugh came out thin. "I won't. I'll." He stopped because Kushina was watching, because Naruto had turned toward him with a small squeal, and because a promise meant something different in the soft, raw place where Minato used to be. "I'll be careful." Kakashi's posture relaxed fractionally. "Good. Tomorrow we work chakra flow again. After that, I want you to learn how to hide your water release in a cloth and make it behave like a glove. Practical things. Housework that can be useful on a mission." Kaito's grin was instant. "You mean I can actually help Mom do more than wash the dishes?" "Exactly," Kakashi replied. "And if you can make a ribbon of water cling to a kunai so it slips through an opponent's guard, that's combat utility, not chore." Later that night, Kaito sat by Naruto's crib, watching his baby brother's small, even breaths. He whispered things he didn't let himself think in daytime: the promises, the debts. "I'll get stronger," he told the sleeping child. "I'll make it so no one looks at you like an opening. I'll make sure Mom never bleeds like that again." Naruto cracked an eye and let out a little snort as if acknowledging the vow. Kaito laughed, a wet, bewildered sound, then pushed his fingers through his own hair until his head throbbed, a reminder of how much he had given and how much was left to give. Morning came again too fast. Kakashi found him already warm from training, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes alert. Their session was brutal in the best way: seals, flow, covert water shapes that vanished on contact. Kakashi's critiques were merciless and kind all at once. They drilled the clone coordination until Kaito's arms wanted to fall off. Kakashi observed, corrected, then put Kaito through a short endurance circuit that left him dizzy and grinning. "You're progressing," Kakashi said as they cooled down, letting the light catch at the silver of his hair. "But remember, you don't carry this alone. You have a family, teachers, friends. Use them. The point of strength is to give it away when the moment comes." Kaito thought of Minato, how he had used his strength to buy others time, of Kushina, fierce and flawed, who had never let fear besiege her laughter. He thought of the hush behind Danzo's counsel and the cold corners that waited for an opening. He thought of Itachi's new, rippling power and Hotaru's controlled ferocity. All of them pieces of a future that he could help build. That afternoon Itachi and Kaito met again by the training field. No words of rivalry, just two kids who had tasted how fast the world could move. Itachi's presence was quiet. His Sharingan flickered only when their eyes locked in a spar. They traded techniques, small truths, mutual respect folding out between blows. On the edge of the yard, Hotaru watched, expression unreadable, and Kushina stood a little apart with Naruto nestled against her chest. When the day finally let them go, Kushina pulled Kaito into a hug that smelled of steamy dumplings and flower-scented oil. "You're doing well," she said into his hair. "But promise me something." "Anything," Kaito replied, heart clenching. "Promise me you'll remember why you fight," she whispered. "Not because of hate, not because it's expected of you. Fight because you love what's left. Fight because there are small, warm things that need you." Kaito tasted the warmth of her voice, the stubborn courage that defined the woman who had raised him. He nodded. "I promise." At dusk a small shape slipped from the trees. Kakashi, unreadable, chin resting on his book. "Good," he murmured when he saw them. "Keep that promise, Kaito. I'll keep training you. There's a long road ahead." Kaito watched the sun lower beyond the Hokage monument, saw the carved faces dim into shadow. The world felt wide and dangerous, but it also felt possible. He had a name to honor, debts to pay, and a life to build. He would train until his fingers ached and his breath came ragged. He would learn water that obeyed his will, clones that trusted him without argument, and silence that guarded his family. When he finally tucked Naruto in that night, the baby's hands wrapped around his finger and squeezed. Kaito smiled, fierce and steady, then stood beneath the window and whispered into the dark, "I've got you. All of you. Don't you worry." Kaito dashed down the lane, sneakers slapping stone, heart still high from the afternoon's rush. The Uzumaki house came into view, lanterns already lit, casting warm pools of amber that made the garden look like it was breathing. He pushed open the gate and snuck in the back door, grinning at the thought of surprising Mom with dinner set and chores half done. Inside, the kitchen smelled of simmering broth and something sweet, Kushina's touch everywhere. She hummed a low tune, wiping her hands on her apron when she saw him. "Back early," she teased, though the smile didn't quite reach the tired line at her eyes. "How was the academy today, hero?" "Good," Kaito lied smoothly, dropping his bag and bowing mockingly. "I won honor, glory, and a Tamagoyaki." He shot her a look and, on impulse, reached up to kiss Naruto's little forehead as the baby fussed in Kushina's arms. The squeal of delight that escaped Naruto made Kushina laugh, and for a moment the house felt whole and ordinary again. Kaito set to work without being asked. He pulled bowls from the cupboard, set the table, and, because he was far too proud not to, attempted to flip a Tamagoyaki. The omelette folded, tumbled, and landed in a slightly lopsided cylinder that looked better in Kaito's mind than it did on the plate. Kushina clapped theatrically when he presented it. "Not bad, baby. Not bad at all." They ate with small talk, Kakashi's lessons, Itachi's steady progress, Hotaru's surprise at mastering a clone, and even managed a few jokes about a future in which Kaito would open a soup stand. Between bites Kushina's face would cloud now and then, a small wince, an adjustment of her cloth. Kaito noticed each time. He forced his voice light. "You okay, Mom?" "I'm fine," she said, smooth, and practiced. Just tired. Don't fuss. But her hand rested a moment on her belly and Kaito's stomach tightened. After dinner he busied himself clearing dishes, but Kushina caught his wrist. "Kaito," she said, voice softer than when she teased him, "don't push yourself too hard tomorrow. You trained twice today." He swallowed, remembering the ache in his arms and the way his hair flickered silver at the tips hours after the heel. "I'll be fine. I have to get stronger." "You don't have to do it alone," Kushina replied, eyes warm and fierce all at once. "Use what you have, friends, teachers. Use me. Use Dad's memory. Don't make it all about blame, okay? Promise me, Kaito." His throat closed. "I promise," he said, because even vows meant aloud changed a thing inside. He hugged her tight until Naruto squawked and squirmed between them, and Kushina laughed through the ache. "Mom, he's stealing my hug." Kakashi appeared like he always did, quiet, unreadable, at the edge of the kitchen doorway, one hand to his book, the other offering a small packet. "You left this at the training ground," he said. "You were supposed to hand it to Hotaru." Kaito straightened, flushed. "Thanks, sensei. She did it. She made the clone today." Kakashi nodded. "Good. I saw some of it. Don't get cocky. Control first, show second." He gave Kaito a look that was half admonition and half approval. "And don't overdo the training. You're useful to your family as a son, not just as a warrior." Kaito blinked. "I know." The words tasted truer than they had yesterday. He folded the packet carefully and pocketed it. "I won't. Tomorrow, training with Hotaru. And Kakashi-sensei, I'll show you I'm not reckless." "You'd better," Kakashi replied, voice flat. "And leave one clone at home tomorrow to help your mother. Not as a substitute, because that's cheating, but because people who protect others need to be around them." That night, after tucking Naruto in, after Naruto latched onto a finger and fell asleep with a tiny hand curled around Kaito's knuckle, Kaito sat by the window and watched the moon slide over the Hokage faces carved into stone. The wind carried the low, steady hum of the village, someone sweeping a roof, merchants shutting up shop for the night, distant laughter. He thought of Minato's smile, the way it had steadied everything, and of the hole his absence had left. He thought of Kushina's hands, strong, scarred at the edges of memory, and of the pale tips of his own hair. Each thought was a stone in his pocket that only got heavier as he walked. Kaito whispered into the dark, to the monument and to the quiet world at large, "I'll keep you safe. I'll make sure nothing takes this from us again." The vow sounded clumsy and small, but it settled in his chest like an ember. He fanned it with the memory of Kakashi's lesson and Hotaru's steady fingers as she'd formed her first true clone. He would train. He would learn. He would take whatever time it required. He extinguished the lamp and let sleep come, slow and earned, knowing dawn would arrive with a new list of tasks: drills with Kakashi, a water exercise that refused to yield, a walk to the Hyuga compound to meet Hotaru, and somewhere in between, the careful keeping of a mother's heart steady. The path was long and jagged, but for the first time since that terrible night, Kaito felt something like peace, not the absence of fear, but the presence of purpose. Kushina squeezed Kaito once more, breathing him in like a prayer, and finally let go. "All right," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in it. "You'll graduate early, but only if Itachi and Hotaru go with you. And you'll do it properly. No shortcuts, no cheap stunts. Promise me you'll listen to your sensei." Kaito nodded so hard his shoulders jerked. "I promise, Mom. I won't let you down." They slept badly that night, not for lack of will but because the mind, once set to a course, churns in the dark. Dawn came with a brittle clarity. Kushina dressed carefully, smoothing the red braid over her shoulder as if armor. Kaito, hair still mussed from sleep, checked his pouch twice. They walked to the Hokage building together, Naruto tucked asleep against Kushina's chest, a tiny, trusting weight that steadied Kaito like nothing else. Inside, the meeting room smelled of incense and old paper. Hiruzen greeted them with eyes softened by grief and resolve. Danzo sat like a blade in a velvet sheath, expression flat as ever. Koharu and Homura watched with the cautious concern of those who had known too many funerals. Fugaku was absent, ostensibly on patrol, though his shadow lingered in the room like a promise of questions yet to be asked. "You wish to see me?" Kushina asked, steady despite the knot in her stomach. Hiruzen folded his hands. "We discussed this briefly at the council. Your son's performance, Kaito's, was mentioned by the academy staff. The instructors feel he, along with Itachi and Hotaru, demonstrate skill beyond their years." He looked down at Kaito with a softness he reserved for moments when the world needed a parent more than a leader. "I don't make this decision lightly, Kushina. I know what you lost. I know what you stand to lose." Danzo spoke before Hiruzen could finish. "We cannot afford sentiment to dictate policy. If these children are to graduate early, they must be an asset to the village, not liabilities." He steepled his fingers. "I propose formal testing, supervised by Jonin, and immediate placement into active teams. We must also ensure Kaito's abilities are monitored. The Uzumaki bloodline is potent." Kushina's hand tightened unconsciously around Naruto. "He's a child," she said, the edges of steel showing. "He nearly died carrying his duty. He doesn't need to be used as a tool. He needs guidance." Hiruzen held up a palm. "Both are true. Which is why I propose a compromise. We will allow early graduation, conditional. They will undergo an accelerated exam administered by a panel of Jonin. Should they pass, they will graduate and be placed under the tutelage of a chosen instructor for a probationary period. They will not be immediately thrust into dangerous missions. They will be trained, supervised, and their assignments will be carefully controlled." Danzo's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. The battle thundered through the chamber at speeds most shinobi could never comprehend. Stone shattered. Air distorted. Chakra crackled through the room in waves. And Kaito. Kaito faded into darkness, his last sight being his father clashing against the masked man with divine ferocity. His final thought. "I'm counting on you, Chusan." And then his world slipped away. The moment Minato vanished in that familiar swirl of golden light, the small, dimly lit safe house fell silent, almost eerily so. Only the faint rustle of Kushina's strained breathing and the soft, uneven rhythm of Naruto's tiny exhales filled the room. Kushina tightened her trembling arms around her children. Though her body felt impossibly heavy, drained, hollow, fragile, she held Kaito and Naruto as though they were her lifelines. Tears clung to her lashes, her vision blurring as she looked at them. "Kaito. Naruto," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Stay with me, okay? Mommy's right here." Kaito remained unconscious beside her, his head resting in her lap. Even through her exhaustion, Kushina's heart twisted painfully as she took in the state of her eldest son. His wrist, bent unnaturally. His forehead, bruised and blooded. His little body, limp, fragile, struggling. "Kaito-kun," she cried softly, brushing his red hair with weak fingertips. "You were so brave, too brave. Why no?" Her voice wavered, tears spilling freely now. "They are better together." Hiruzen agreed. "They will be examined together and, if they advance, will form a provisional squad under Kakashi-sensei until further evaluation." Danzo folded his hands. "Very well. I will place 2 ANBU monitoring teams on standby. Discretion is essential." Kaito felt a pressure ease in his chest. Not all of it, grief was a weight that didn't fully lift, but a bridge had formed between where he was and where he needed to be. He glanced at Kakashi. The copy ninja's single visible eye crinkled faintly, possibly a smile, possibly a warning. Either was enough. The exams were not a ceremony but a crucible. Despite the brief celebrations that followed Minato's legendary triumph against the Hidden Stone, the village was still caught in the grinding gears of the Third Great Shinobi War. But for me, every passing day felt like watching a timer countdown. A countdown to the night my parents were destined to die. The ceasefire with the Hidden Stone brought a measure of relief, but also political turmoil. Hiruzen's refusal to demand reparations enraged many in the upper ranks. Obito spun, Sharingan blazing, barely phasing in time as Minato's strike passed through him. "So," Obito drawled, "you came alone, without your wife to anchor you." Minato's jaw clenched. "You've done enough tonight." The masked man's single red eye narrowed. "Kaito interfered more than I expected, but it changes nothing." Minato's blood ran cold. "You touched my son," he whispered, his voice quiet, yet colder than steel. The killing intent pouring off him shook the very air. Obito tilted his head. "And I'll do worse if you stand in my—" Minato vanished. The masked man barely had a second to react. But Minato's Rasengan slammed into him mid-phase transition, catching him at the precise moment between tangible and intangible. The impact sent Obito crashing through a boulder, mask cracking even further. He staggered, coughing. "TCH, troublesome Hokage." Minato didn't give him time to recover. Flying Raijin, level 2. A golden flash. A kunai whistling through the air. A teleportation. A violent clash. A gasp. A tearing sound. Minato severed the control over the Ninetails. The genjutsu shattered. Obito recoiled in shock as the massive beast roared, its eyes clearing momentarily. Before Obito could reassert control, Minato hurled another kunai. Straight through the Kamui portal. Marking the edge of Obito's personal dimension. Kushina wept quietly in the corridor when she read it, Naruto cooing in her arms. She let Kaito see, let him see her grief and her pride braided together. "You'll be careful," she told him in a voice so small it might have been a thought. "I will," Kaito answered. "I'll come back. I promise." He kept that promise in the smallest of ways. He made shadow clones tidy the house before school. He doubled his water training to make time for Kakashi's drills. He walked to the Hyuga compound to meet Hotaru for sunrise practice and stayed late working on seal diagrams by lamplight. Every joke, every small victory, every tear he didn't show was a brick laid in a wall meant to keep the people he loved safe. Outside, the village breathed and repaired and went on. The news of the children's early graduation moved through the market and tea houses like a current of wary hope. Danzo's shadowed approval came in the form of a curt memorandum placing additional surveillance near Uzumaki activities. Hiruzen's blessing came as an order that Kakashi would not let any of his students be sent on high-risk missions until he judged them ready. Kaito climbed the training hill that evening, Naruto's laughter echoing somewhere inside the compound, and looked toward the Hokage monument. The stone faces watched, unblinking. He imagined his father's laugh, the wry hint of mischief that had made danger look like a problem to solve instead of an enemy that swallowed the world. "I'll make you proud," he whispered to the night and to the sleeping village, to the people he loved, and to the memory of the man carved into the monument. It was a promise made into the dark, and in the quiet that answered, that promise was enough to keep him going. But for now, there wasn't much he could do except keep a close eye on his family. Night settled over the Uzumaki home like a soft, obedient blanket. Laughter and the smell of warm cake lingered in the corners of the house, even as the more raucous parts of the party wound down. With one final look, a look heavy with love, fear, and determination, Minato activated the flying Raijin. In a flare of golden light, he vanished, leaving behind a swirl of displaced air and the faint echo of a man racing against fate itself. Kushina tightened her trembling arms around her sons, one sleeping, one still unconscious, and fought back the storm of emotions ravaging her heart. Fear, exhaustion, pain, but above all, hope. Hope that Minato would return. Hope that her children would live to see tomorrow. It wasn't enough to stave off the terror in his chest, but it was something, a first line, thin but determined. Kushina watched him with the knowledge of a mother who had lived with fear and found a way to love through it. "You don't have to carry all of it, Kaito," she whispered, handing him a paper cup of tea. "You're allowed to be afraid. You're allowed to be a child, too." He took the cup without looking at her, lips pressed in a line. "I know," he said softly. "But if I don't do something, who will? I can't just wait for danger to come again." He swallowed and met her eyes. "I'll be careful. I promise. Kushina's fingers closed over his hand, squeezing once. Then be clever, not just strong. That's how you'll keep us safe. The next morning dawned grey and watchful. Kaito rose with it, quick, efficient. He trained with the rest of the morning, shadow clone drills, chakra control, a short spar with Hotaru that left both of them laughing and coughing. Yet underneath the routine throbbed the memory of the street yesterday, the sneers, and the mirrors of suspicion in other people's faces. It soured him. He had thought grief would make the village kinder, but it had only sharpened old edges. Midday, while Kushina laid Naruto down for a nap and Kakashi dozed in a chair like a wary guardian, an unmarked messenger arrived at the Uzumaki door. The parchment bore Hiruzen's seal. Inside was a short note, a summons to the Hokage office at once. The halls of the Hokage building always smelled of history, incense, ink, and smoke-hardened wisdom, and today they felt heavier. Hiruzen met them in the antechamber, eyes lined and hands folded. He didn't waste time. There's been an uptick in unusual activity near Uzumaki property, he began bluntly. Small reconnaissance squads with low profile, likely not ANBU, but professional. I don't want to alarm you, but I think it's prudent to increase protection. Before Kushina could reply, Danzo's silhouette detached from the shadowed doorway, as quiet and sudden as a stopped clock. In the heart of Konoha, the air twisted unnaturally. A swirling vortex tore open space itself. From it stepped the masked man. He raised his left hand, summoning jutsu. A thunderous plume of smoke exploded outward. Shockwaves rippled through the district. Civilians stumbled back, startled, confused. As the smoke cleared, the nine-tailed fox stood revealed. Monstrous, terrifying, eyes blazing with malice. A scream tore through the night. Panic erupted instantly. Nine tails. Run. The masked man stood atop its head, his voice booming with malice. Go, Nine Tails. With a roar that shook the very bones of the village, the bijou charged. Buildings crumpled like paper beneath swipes of its tails. Flames burst across rooftops. The better you sense them, the easier it will be to control your chakra later. Kushina had taught me this in theory, but Minato's guiding chakra made it feel real, tangible. Next came physical drills. Minato had me run laps around the training ground, climb low branches, jump between stumps, and dodge padded strikes. It was basic, but it was more intense than anything I had done before. By the time I finished my third lap, sweat rolled down my forehead. You're doing great, Minato encouraged. Let's take a small break. I nodded, chest rising and falling quickly, but determination burning equally bright. Because I wasn't just running, I was building the foundation for the future I desperately needed to change. We will also increase patrols during the night. You are not alone. Kushina inclined her head, and for the first time in a long while something like relief passed over her face. Thank you. That evening, under a crescent moon, Kaito met with Kakashi at the training ground. The air smelled of crushed grass and the cool edges of coming rain. Kakashi had the list Hiruzen authorized, Jounin guards, ANBU in rotation, and Danzo's men, an arrangement that made Kaito's jaw clench but also gave a structure he could exploit. You're not allowed to go solo on missions, Kakashi said, matter of fact. And you'll not shadow any ANBU detail. Minato slammed both palms forward. A massive space airtime seal spread like a net. The bijou bomb vanished. A massive explosion lit the night sky, safely outside the village. Minato sensed him instantly. He spun. And his kunai passed straight through the masked man. The masked man grabbed Minato's wrist. I'm your opponent. And it's over. A vortex dragged Minato's body toward it. But Minato vanished in a bright flare. The masked man clicked his tongue. He teleported away. Next time, I'll catch him the instant I touch him. Minato's words struck like a hammer blow, final and absolute. Don't abuse it. Kaito accepted it like a sacred thing. Thanks. Later that night, Kaito walked the perimeter himself once, more out of habit than need. He dispelled one clone in the shadow of the shed, folded the memory of its patrol back into his mind, and sat on the low stone wall watching the village breathe. He let himself listen, a gift he'd learned from Kakashi. Footsteps, distant river, the soft breathing of a child somewhere in the compound, a dog's bark, the rustle of leaves. There, faint, like a footprint at the edge of rain, someone moved through the shadow line beyond the garden. It was subtle, not the clumsy tread of a drunk or the gleeful scamper of teenagers. It was a controlled approach, professional. Kaito stood, muscles coiled. He didn't move himself. He let the presence come closer and instead unclipped the small Hiraishin medallion Minato had given him long ago. It was a talisman now, nothing more, but he'd hidden a thin sealing tag inside its rim, a trick Minato had shown him years ago in passing. He thought of the masked man, of Obito, and Zetsu whispered like curses, of Danzo's offer. The figure paused at the edge of the lantern light. A whisper of displaced grass, then a soft, familiar chuckle. "You've been busy, Kaito Uzumaki," a voice said from the hedge. "Training, clones, your mother looks well. Is the baby sleeping?" Kaito's heart was a drum. He stepped into the light, still young, still raw, but not naive. The intruder stepped forward into the moonlight, Shisui Uchiha. Relief and confusion collided in Kaito's chest. "Shisui? You scared me," Kaito breathed. Shisui flashed that grin that made even the night look friendlier. "Sorry. I thought you could use some reinforcement. I heard about the harassment today. I don't like cowards who pick on moms." Kaito let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You came alone." "For now," Shisui said, eyes flicking toward the Uzumaki home. "It's a small village. Rumors travel fast. If anyone's been paid to stir trouble, they'll be sloppy. I've been watching some of Danzo's moves." Minato appeared atop a ruined rooftop, his breath catching for a moment as he took in the sight. Homes crushed, flames licking the horizon, shinobi scattered like insects against the overwhelming force of the tailed beast. He clenched his fists, jaw tight. "I have to end this, now." High above on a cratered rooftop, Hiruzen Sarutobi leapt backward as the Ninetail's claws crashed down where he had stood moments before. Even with all his years of experience, even with Enma, the adamantine staff, summoned at his side, the sheer power of the beast forced him on the defensive. "Damn it. Minato, hurry," he muttered under his breath. As if answering his call, a streak of yellow light tore through the battlefield. Shisui gave Kaito a quick, conspiratorial grin. "Also, stop beating up random chunin in the street. It's messy. Let them learn lessons from embarrassment instead." He winked and melted back into the night as deftly as he'd come. Kaito watched him go, and the promise he'd muttered to the moon earlier took firmer shape in his heart. He would be better, smarter, and when the day came that Danzo moved his paw too close, Kaito would be ready. But tonight, there were other things: a small boy's sleeping breath inside the house, Kushina humming as she mended a frayed sleeve, Kakashi's quiet counsel in his pouch, and those were enough to anchor him for the moment. Evacuate the civilians, suppress the fires, and keep casualties minimal. Hiruzen nodded, seeing the fire in Minato's eyes. "And you?" "I'm ending this," Minato said, lifting a marked kunai. Another thunderous roar shook the earth as the Ninetails began gathering chakra, forming another tailed beast bomb. Minato narrowed his eyes. "I'll stop him here. No matter what." Hiruzen gave him a long, searching look, the look only a mentor could give his successor. Then he steeled his expression. "Very well. Hokage. Do what only you can do." Minato vanished. At the same moment, deep within the safe house, Kushina clung weakly to Naruto with one arm, her other arm curled protectively around Kaito's limp body. Kaito tapped a rough sketch and explained, outlining hand seals, a small channel point behind the ear and the earring's conductive ring. Kushina listened intently, occasionally nodding and asking the kind of pointed questions that turned a childish scheme into a working fuinjutsu. "That," she murmured at last, "is clever. Disrupting chakra flow in reaction to an external pattern is risky. You could trap yourself if the timing's wrong. But as a one-shot breaker, it'll work." You'll need a failsafe, something that prevents the seal from collapsing your own flow if it misfires. Kaito's grin widened. That's why I put the overflow thread in the metal. It dumps excess to the earlobe seal and dissipates it. The beast roared in fury, chakra swirling violently around its jaws. Minato pressed his palm against the creature's skull. Contract seal. A massive seal matrix erupted beneath him, chaining the nine-tails form with brilliant tendrils of chakra. The rampaging beast staggered, its roar breaking into a howl as the masked man's control finally dissolved completely. The crimson beast thrashed wildly, but now it wasn't being controlled. Now it was pure rage. And pure power. Minato immediately teleported away as one of the massive tails swung toward him, smashing through a dozen buildings at once. Just move. I took a deep breath. My body tensed with anticipation. Ready. Hi. The first pebble flew toward me. I dodged easily. Then another. And another. They gradually became faster. Sharper. Higher. Soon, Minato's arm blurred. He wasn't throwing pebbles anymore. He was throwing precision tests. Good, he murmured. Your eyes are following well. I pivoted left, then ducked right, flipping over a low pebble that zipped just inches above the ground. My heart pounded with excitement. This is fun. I exclaimed between breaths. Minato chuckled. You sound just like Kushina. The speed increased again. Rin gasped from behind. Kakashi's visible eye sharpened in interest. Even Obito stopped mid-complaint to stare. Don't you dare make Naruto carry this burden alone. Don't you dare leave our boys without their father. Minato paused mid-gesture, the spectral Shinigami looming behind him like a giant shadow only he could see. Its hollow eyes glowed, its claws already reaching to claim its sacrifice. Even Kushina, drained and barely conscious, could feel the suffocating pressure of death crowding around Minato. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, the facade of the Hokage slipped away. He was just Minato. Her Minato. A husband. A father. A man torn between duty and love. Kushina, he whispered, his voice breaking for the first time. If I don't, the village falls. And if the village falls, our children, they fall with it. Tears streamed down Kushina's cheeks, hot against her cooling skin. But Minato, can't we find another way? Why must you be the one to die? Minato knelt before her, gently brushing a strand of red hair away from her tear-streaked face. Because, he said softly, if someone must pay the price, it should be me. Outside the barrier, Hiruzen slammed his fists against the dome again, desperation twisting his features. Minato. Kushina. Stop. Don't do this, he shouted hoarsely. But the barrier, woven from Kushina's dying chakra, didn't budge an inch. Its fiery edges only flared brighter with each attempt. Itachi's voice, soft and almost apologetic, called Kaito's name as the world pressed in. Kaito's stomach dropped. The first fingertip reached for the anchor inside his ear, felt the microseal respond and spill. The genjutsu's threads brushed his mind, searching for purchase, and found the breaker already halfway engaged. The earring's little metal ring sang, a high whisper in his skull, and the chakra pattern around his nerves shattered the illusion's weave. Itachi's expression flickered with surprise. The Sharingan's circles tightened. The training ground snapped back into place. Leaves stopped their pretend whispering. For a heartbeat none of them moved. He stood, facing the towering nine-tails thrashing against her chains, its eyes burning with primal hatred. The spectral Shinigami behind him raised its arms slowly, sensing the nearing sacrifice. I'm sorry, Kushina, Minato whispered without turning back. But our children, they deserve tomorrow. Summoning every last ounce of chakra left within him, Minato's hands flashed through the final sequence of the dead demon consuming seal. Behind him, the Shinigami opened its skeletal jaws. Kushina screamed, the sound raw and broken. Minato. But her voice could not reach him in time. The Shinigami plunged its hand forward, straight into Minato's chest. The world seemed to hold its breath. Minato's body jerked, but he didn't collapse. At the Uzumaki house, Kushina hugged Kaito as he returned, pride and worry braided in her arms. "You tested it?" she asked, voice soft. "Passed," he said. "Itachi tried." Kaito grinned. He was surprised. She laughed, a sound that shivered the last of the day's gloom away for a moment. "Good. Be careful. The village still watches us like we are fragile glass. Make your glass stronger." That night, as everyone drifted to sleep and the moon swept silver across the roof, Kaito sat by Naruto's crib, the earring in his palm. He thought of Danzo's offer, Shisue's quiet warning, Itachi's fleeting smile. There were men with agendas now circling closer than before, and he had made himself a small reinforcement in the fight. But seals were only tools. The real protection would come from people who kept their promises. He slid the earring on, tucked a sketch of his next seal under his pillow, and placed 2 clones at their usual posts. One to watch the gate, one to shadow the back garden. The rest he would keep for training. He breathed in, the night thick with leaf scent and distant voices, and he made himself a new vow. He would learn everything he could, not for vengeance, not only for vengeance, but so that if the darkness ever came again, it would have to fight through more than a boy with scars. It would have to fight through a family, a village, and the bonds he was building, link by stubborn link. Minato, from a distance, watched them with a fond expression, his arms crossed. "I never get tired of seeing that," he murmured to himself. A mother passing her fire to her child. Once lunch was done, Minato stood and clapped his hands. "Team Minato. Let's resume the sparring rotation." Rin stretched. Kakashi rolled his shoulders. Obito fired himself up with a dramatic pose. Kaito sat beside Kushina, watching with wide eyes as Minato sparred them one at a time. He moved with grace and precision, always fast, always calculated, and always holding back enough to avoid hurting them. Kakashi countered with smart angles and traps, Rin supported with medical chakra bursts, and Obito rushed in with explosive enthusiasm. Kushina's instincts ignited. Chains burst from her back, dragging her across the ground toward her children even as her body failed her. She threw her own body over Naruto and Kaito, shielding them with everything she had left. "Not my children." The colossal claw descended. Minato saw it. He reacted without hesitation. He threw himself over all 3, Kushina, Naruto, and Kaito, taking the full brunt of the Ninetails blow. Blood sprayed across the ground. Kushina hummed as she fed Naruto, watching Kaito with an expression that tried to be casual and failed. Her eyes betrayed the calculation of a mother always measuring risk. "You'll be careful?" she asked before he left. "Always," he lied, then corrected, more honestly, "mostly careful." She ruffled his hair and pressed a small sachet into his palm. "Salt for the wound of travel," she said with a wink, though Kaito knew it was more habit than necessity. He found Kakashi at the old training ground with a thermos and a scroll tucked under one arm. The Jonen's single visible eye crinkled when Kaito approached. "Early," Kakashi observed. "You said you'd help," Kaito replied, breathing a small laugh. "And you gave me these," he added, holding up Minato's Rasengan diagrams. Kakashi's eye flicked down to the paper. "Minato's handwriting," he murmured. He was particular about flow. "We'll start with form, then compression. I'll time you." They worked through the morning. Kakashi's corrections were surgical. Pressure here, loosen the fingers there, and each adjustment felt like the whittling away of doubt until Kaito could feel a small, stubborn sphere of chakra humming at his palm like a captive moth. And then, with the faintest swirl of leaves, it vanished. Minato narrowed his eyes. Someone was observing us. Kaito's heart raced. Was it Danzo's route? An ANBU scout? A spy from another village? Or someone much darker? Kakashi stepped forward. "Sensei, should we pursue?" Minato shook his head. "No. Their chakra masked too quickly. For now, stay alert." Kushina held Kaito a little tighter than usual. But Kaito didn't tremble. Instead, a fire lit inside him. "If someone is watching us," It means I'm not the only one preparing for the future. And whatever storm was coming, Kaito Uzumaki would be ready for it. No matter what. Lunch with Kushina was always special. Even when we were perched high on a tree branch, swaying gently in the breeze, she managed to make it feel like home. A mother's warmth could turn any place into comfort, even a battlefield training ground. Below us, Team Minato was in the midst of their bell test. The same test my father had used countless times, but today felt different. Kakashi, now a newly minted jonin, moved with a maturity far beyond his years. His Sharingan I remained covered under the Hittai for now, but even without it, his movements were sharp and unforgiving. Rin supported with flawless chakra usage, keeping Obito steady, boosting his stamina, and forming perfect teamwork triangles. Minato and Kushina, choosing to sacrifice themselves. Inside the barrier, Minato steadied his breath as he stepped back toward the towering, thrashing form of the Ninetales. Kushina's chakra chains dug into the creature's limbs, glowing violently as they held the beast down, even as her body trembled from the effort. Minato nodded once, quietly, his expression solemn. Behind him, the translucent figure of the Shinigami loomed, cold, ghastly, its skeletal face contorted in an eternal, silent scream. The deity's hand pierced straight through Minato's chest, ripping effortlessly through his Hokage vest, emerging from the front in a grotesque display of spiritual power. Its ghastly arm shot toward the Ninetales with terrifying speed. Danzo's words were dangerous kindness. "I don't want anything from you," Kaito said finally, flat and steady. "No." Danzo's smile was thin. "You reject help well. That makes you predictable, which is why I came to offer another chance. The village has needs, and you have talents. With proper guidance, you could join Root." Kaito interrupted. He didn't need to finish. The promise and the poison were the same. Danzo's expression hardened. "A boy with your gifts must choose carefully. Not all offers are traps. Some are paths." "My path protects my family, not sells them," Kaito said. He stepped forward, not threatening but resolute. "We don't need bargains that cost us what we are." Danzo's eyes narrowed. For a long breath they weighed one another, then the older man inclined his head. "Suit yourself," he said, and left the way he had come, leaves whispering to hide him. When the dust of Danzo's departure faded, Kaito felt both exhausted and electrified. He had refused a person who could have had so much leverage. That choice would not go unnoticed. It would change the calculations of people who liked to keep pieces in play. He didn't tell Kushina about the visit that day. He couldn't let her worry. Instead he walked home with Minato's scrolls folded into his hand and Naruto's baby laughter drifting down the street like a bell. The village was healing outwardly, repairs, new paint, laughter, but the fractures beneath hadn't sealed. That night Kaito sat by Naruto's crib and read Minato's letter again. There was a phrase he had not noticed before, small and deliberate: "Teach him to laugh. That will be the shield no jutsu can pierce." He smiled despite everything. There were seals and Rasengan and Hiraishin to master, plans to lay and enemies to outthink, but Minato had left them a different kind of instruction, too. Protecting Naruto wasn't only about techniques. It was about keeping the small, stubborn light alive. Its eyes gleamed with murderous intent. "Now!" it roared, lifting its massive claw and slamming it down toward the tiny form of baby Naruto. Kaito's mind felt like it was floating in fog. His consciousness wavered in and out like a broken signal. The world around him was muffled, someone shouting, someone coughing, something roaring. Then a chilling thought stabbed through the haze. "Mom. Dad. Naruto." His eyes snapped open. Blurry shapes. Red light. The silhouette of the Ninetales' enormous claw descending toward the altar. And his parents, both of them, jumping in front of it. Time slowed to a crawl. "No." Kaito lurched up, every nerve in his body screaming. "What did you expect?" Obito leaned in toward Kakashi. "Is that good or bad?" Kakashi sighed. "It means he'll surpass you at this rate." "What?" Rin laughed softly. Kushina guided me to a clear patch in the training ground. All right, Kaito. Let's start with the basics. She produced an ink brush and unrolled a scroll with small, delicate symbols. These are chakra formulas, the backbone of all Fuinjutsu. My eyes widened. The symbols pulsed faintly with chakra even before touching them. They reminded me of complex circuits, elegant, ancient, powerful. Kushina dipped the brush and handed it to me. Try copying this one. She pointed at the simplest symbol, the basic chakra retention formula. I began slowly. I said, this was the father's duty. Kushina's breath was shallow, but she managed a trembling smile. Then all the more, since I'm his mother, she whispered. I'm sorry. The nine-tails writhed as the chains tightened. You miserable brats, it growled. Kushina, Minato said, still forcing himself upright. I'll seal your remaining chakra inside Naruto, so you can meet him again. Kaito's sobbing cut through them. Mom. Dad. Minato and Kushina turned. Their eyes softened instantly. Kushina's voice shook. Kaito-kun, you have my ability. I'm so proud of you, but I'm so sorry we can't stay with you and Naruto. Kaito grinned and launched in. 3 shadow clones, a whirling of kunai, a burst of wind that scattered Minazuki's hat off the low parapet, which Minazuki, to everyone's surprise, let fall and then caught without complaint. He ended with a seed of Rasengan the size of a marble, spinning in his palm. It was rough, not fully rounded, but it held. Minazuki watched quietly. Enough. He paced a slow half-circle. You can all do flashy things. The question is whether you can do them together and for the right reasons. Itachi's voice was low. What do you want from us, sensei? Simple. Minazuki turned and plucked a tattered training map from the crate behind him. There's a supply cart scheduled to move from the eastern gate to the merchant quarter. Bandits have been poking around. You'll escort the cart. Keep the supplies safe. No heroics. No solo stunts. Work as a unit. Hotaru blinked. Escort duty? It seemed tame. Kaito's chest tightened in a way he didn't expect, relief and a slash of disappointment. He'd wanted immediate danger, a chance to put Danzo or anyone with eyes for Naruto on the run. Obito tried, and failed, to hide the fact that he wanted Kakashi's attention. Minato basked in the familiar comfort of watching his precious students grow. And me? I watched Obito. Really watched him. The boy sitting on the ground, messy hair sticking up everywhere, dirt smudged on his cheeks, eyes full of dreams. That boy felt nothing like the masked man who would one day bring Konoha to its knees. How? How could this boy become that monster? He was whiny, emotional, reckless, kind-hearted, clumsy, but he had heart. So much heart that it overflowed out of him. Yet I knew his fate. I knew what would break him. And that knowledge burned like a kunai lodged in my chest. I have to change his fate. Not just for him. But for Minato. For Kushina. For Naruto. For myself. As the others ate and talked, I stepped aside, pretending to admire the scenery. In truth, I was deep in thought, trying to piece everything together. Obito is still years away from awakening Mangekyo. Rin is still alive. Kakashi has only just become Jonin. And Madara, somewhere out there, waits. The timeline was aligning. The Canopy Bridge mission was coming. Obito's death. Madara's manipulation. The beginning of the masked man. My stomach twisted. I heard footsteps behind me, soft and hesitant. Obito. Hey, he said awkwardly, scratching his cheek. You okay? I blinked, startled. I hadn't expected him. Why yeah. The meeting dragged on deep into the night, the atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Though the clan heads nodded, accepting the reconstruction plan as necessary, every single one of them felt the shift, a quiet but undeniable fracture forming within the heart of the village. And at the center of that growing divide stood the Uchiha. Fugaku's jaw tightened, eyes darkening with a silent storm. He said nothing more, But every experienced ninja in the room could feel the quiet simmer of resentment filling the air around him. Hiruzen felt it too. The third Hokage slowly exhaled, the subtle tremor in his breath betraying just how precarious this moment was. A forced relocation during a time of tragedy, he thought heavily. This will plant seeds we may regret. But the village needed rebuilding, and grief had already pushed everyone into survival mode. One by one, the clan heads departed the council chamber, leaving Hiruzen and his two advisors behind. Danzo had already slipped away, vanishing into the shadows like a whisper of suspicion. Hiruzen walked to the window, gazing out at the scarred remains of his village. The fires from the Ninetales rampage had long been extinguished, but the charred skeletons of countless homes still stood like tombstones. Kaito's fingers went to the pendant beneath his shirt. He wanted to say more, about Danzo, about promises, but the roof felt thin, and secrets fluttered like birds. Instead he nodded. When they walked back into the classroom, their heads were light with a new kind of weight. Team 11, Jonin-sensei Minazuki, escort duty at dusk, mundane on paper, but a test in reality. Kaito thought of Minato's scrolls in his bag, of the Rasengan he'd just coaxed into existence, and of Naruto's small sleeping face. He thought of Kushina's cough and Danzo's shadow. The pieces of his life felt less scattered now. They had a pattern, even if he couldn't see the full tapestry yet. It hides beneath the earth. Her hand slowly tightened at her side. Kaito, she whispered, you are being targeted. The words sent a shock through his entire body. What do you mean? Targeted by who? Hotaru shook her head. I do not know. But this presence was not interested in your mother. Not your father. Not the baby. Her white eyes slowly met his. It was watching you. Kaito's heart thundered. Zetsu wasn't just monitoring Kakashi. He wasn't just spying on Kushina. It was him. Kaito Uzumaki. A variable in the timeline. A deviation. Something Madara and Zetsu could not understand or control. Hotaru stepped closer, voice low but unwavering. I will help you. Whatever it is, you will not face it alone. For the first time in a long while, Kaito felt something besides dread. Hope. A new ally. Someone strong. Someone sharp. Someone fearless. He exhaled slowly. Thank you, Hotaru. She nodded once, and disappeared into the darkness as silently as she'd arrived. The moon glowed dimly overhead. The world grew still. And Kaito understood something with chilling clarity. The night of Naruto's birth was no longer just a danger to his parents. It was a danger to him, too. But this time, he would be ready. Kaito's sigh went unnoticed amidst the warm laughter that filled the room. Minato and Kushina were glowing with joy, and Jiraiya, despite trying to hide behind bravado, looked genuinely touched. For a boy so young, the pain he endured was unimaginable. The pain he would continue to face, even more so. And in a cradle beside Kaito's bedside, baby Naruto slept soundly, wrapped in warm blankets. His tiny chest rose and fell steadily, blissfully ignorant of the tragedy that had unfolded. The faint marking of the 8 trigrams seal glowed softly beneath his swaddling cloth, pulsing like a heartbeat. The nurse stepped closer, brushing Naruto's cheek with the back of her finger. You've lost so much, and you don't even know it yet, she whispered sadly. As she turned to leave, she paused, glancing between the 3 Uzumaki. Kushina, Kaito, Naruto. The pieces of a broken family trying to survive the aftermath of fate. A feast worthy of the great Toad Sage. Kushina shot him a glare sharp enough to slice through a boulder. 1 plate of food. No more. And no peeking while I cook, you know, she scolded. Jiraiya froze. Minato laughed behind his hand. Kaito smirked. Kushina's wrath was universal. Jiraiya leaned toward Minato. How do you survive living with a woman like that? Minato straightened up instantly and whispered back, because I enjoy living. Jiraiya snorted as Kaito choked on air. Once the meal was served, the energy in the room mellowed into something warm and familial. Even Jiraiya, self-proclaimed man of culture, ate quietly for a moment, savoring Kushina's cooking. "Kaito," he said suddenly, chopsticks paused mid-air, "I haven't had a chance to talk to you properly." Kaito glanced up warily. "I heard," Jiraiya continued, "that you're training hard. And that your chakra control is Uzumaki level frightening." Minato nodded proudly. He's already learned smokeless shunshin. Jiraiya whistled. "At 5? Damn. You're a prodigy." Kaito blinked, startled. Praise from Jiraiya felt strange. "But," the Sannin added, leaning in, "don't rush. Power that grows too fast can twist you. Seen it too many times." For a second, a fraction of a second, Kaito saw something in Jiraiya's eyes. Regret. Jiraiya swallowed. "That's a big thing to ask, kid." Kaito didn't blink. "Even bigger than writing a book. Or chasing girls." A vein popped on Kushina's forehead. Minato coughed violently to hide a laugh. Jiraiya sputtered. Hey, what do you know about?" "Enough," Kaito replied firmly. "Enough to know Naruto deserves better." The silence that followed was heavier, deeper, important. Then, Jiraiya's smile faded, replaced by a small, tired one. "You're right," he murmured. "You're absolutely right." He looked down at the table, fingers tightening around his chopsticks. "I failed Minato as a teacher. Failed Nagato. Failed Yahiko. Failed so many people. I don't want to fail anyone else." Minato's eyes softened with gratitude. Jiraiya exhaled shakily. "I'll do better. For Naruto. And for you too." Kaito felt something loosen inside him. Maybe, this time, things could be different. Once Kushina went to rest, Minato, Jiraiya, and Kaito remained in the living room. Jiraiya's demeanor changed instantly, Sannin mode activated. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a scroll glowing with powerful chakra signatures. "Kaito." His voice was grave. "There's something you should know." Minato straightened. "Sensei." Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. "Someone has been sneaking around Konoha's borders. An unknown entity. My spy network caught glimpses, but the descriptions don't match any known shinobi." Kaito's heart dropped. "And I'm proud of you." Kaito's throat tightened. "But understand this," Minato's voice dropped, filled with a quiet strength only Hokage possessed. "Your mother and I are not fragile. We are your parents. It is our job to protect you." Kaito's heart ached painfully. "But Chusan, I can help." "I know." Minato smiled gently. "And you will. But when the time comes, don't act alone. Promise me." Kaito hesitated. "Why promise?" Minato pulled him into a hug. "We'll face whatever comes. Together." As Kaito lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, his mind churned. Jiraiya was back. Zetsu was watching. Naruto's birth was nearing. And the masked man, Obito, was getting closer. But this time, Naruto wouldn't be alone. Kushina wouldn't be helpless. Minato wouldn't be caught off guard. And Kaito Uzumaki was no longer the child destiny overlooked. He was the variable. The change. The storm the enemy never anticipated. He smiled faintly. "Come then, Obito. This time. I'm waiting for you." Jiraiya's grin split his face like a cracked shell, half pride, half pure mischief. He leaned back, letting the afternoon sun wash over his broad shoulders as he watched the 5 shuriken disappear into the wood with a satisfying thunk. "Not bad at all," he said, clapping once. "You got it on the first try. Most genin stumble over the hand signs for weeks." Kaito wiped the sweat from his brow and let himself smile. "It uses a lot of chakra, but I thought I could do it." "You did," Jiraiya agreed. "But don't make the mistake of thinking that more jutsu means more power. Technique without wisdom is a quick way to get yourself killed. Learn its limits. Learn how much you can expend and what you can sacrifice to pull something off." Kaito nodded earnestly. He'd heard similar lectures from Minato and Kushina, but coming from Jiraiya the words felt heavier, like a lesson with a story tucked inside. "Hey, squirt," Jiraiya added, leaning forward and lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You want the real trick? It isn't the clone making itself." Kakashi arrived without fanfare, sliding into the clearing like a shadow with a book. He looked at Kaito, at the white-tipped hair, the clenched fists, the set jaw, and for a moment the older shinobi allowed himself a quiet, approving nod. "Ready?" he asked. Kaito's answer was only a sharp, single nod. They started with the basics: chakra flow, breathing, visualization. Kakashi watched Kaito's hands as he tried to shape water-shaped chakra between his palms. At first the chakra simply felt wrong to Kaito, solid where it should be fluid, stubborn where it should bend. The paper exercise from yesterday had been one thing, turning chakra into water was another. Your Uzumaki blood helps you recover fast, but that doesn't mean damage doesn't matter. He cocked his head. "You look like you've been doing more than normal." Kaito's face flushed. He'd meant to hide the extra training, the Knights of Seals and chakra drills he did while everyone slept. But he knew he couldn't fool Jiraiya's sensei instinct. "Because I need to be stronger," Kaito finally admitted. "For my family." There was no judgment in Jiraiya's expression now, only a steady, unvarnished acceptance. "Then train smart. I'll help where I can. Teach you some ways to save chakra, ways to conserve for the big moment. But you're not doing anything reckless. Promise me that." "I promise," Kaito said, and felt the promise settle like a stone into his chest, heavy, grounding. They walked back toward the village together. Jiraiya chatted lighter things, a ridiculous anecdote about toads, a bit of gossip from the Sannin network, but every now and then he slipped into something sharper, a technique tip, a tactical insight, a reminder to always check your blind spots. Minato's training philosophy bled through Jiraiya's tone too, speed and precision, but never at the expense of discipline. When they reached the Uzumaki house, the lanterns were lit and Kushina was waiting on the porch. The sight of her smiling face eased something in Kaito's chest that he couldn't quite name. It was the first time he'd felt his techniques actually obey him. Kakashi, as always, tempered his praise. "Good. But remember, versatility means using water in ways people don't expect. Don't always make it visible. Learn to hide it. Learn to use it in tandem with your clones." That word, clone, made Kaito's heart race. Once they practiced the cage bunshin alongside the water conversion. Kakashi set a simple drill: produce 3 clones, each one to form a small water ribbon and wrap it around a target, then have the real Kaito move in and finish the technique with a single shuriken. The first attempt left 2 clones exhausted and the real Kaito puffing, panting, the shuriken falling harmlessly short. That night, before he slept, Kaito opened Minato's scrolls again and wrote his own addendum in the margins, a list of contingencies, not just jutsu, but where to hide when someone would come for them, who to trust in the village, and which routes led to the market and back to the Uzumaki home unseen. He added the names he trusted: Itachi, Hotaru, Shikaku, his mother. He underlined Kushina's name. Outside his window Naruto snuffled in his sleep. Kushina's lamp glowed softly. For the first time since the attack, Kaito felt the gnawing thing inside him shift. Vengeance was still there, as bright and hot as ever, but it had a new neighbor: strategy. His clones became efficient assistants, 1 for chores, 2 for practice, 1 for watching Naruto while the others trained. Word of his progress drifted through the village like gossip on wind. Itachi, when he heard, smirked in that small way he had and offered a sparring session. Hotaru Hyuga visited from time to time, shy and distant but improving her taijutsu under Kaito's encouragement. And in the corners of the village where men in dark cloaks met behind closed doors, plans shifted. Danzo watched reports come in, eyes and theories circled like crows. Hiruzen listened, weighed, and worried. The merchants looked relieved to see security. Kaito noticed the smallest tremor of hope on their faces and felt his chest tighten with purpose. "Keep your distance from the wagons unless I tell you," Shikaku said plainly. We move in formation. Itachi, rear guard and reconnaissance. Hotaru, vision and flank watch. Kaito, point and close protection. Learn to read the ground and the people on it. You trip up in the field, you'll take lives with you. Kaito swallowed and nodded. The orders were simple, but the consequence behind each was heavy. They set off. The road out of Konoha smelled of wood smoke and wet earth. For the first day, the journey was uneventful, a good sign that made Shikaku suspicious in a way that the others didn't see. They were children in age, but the way they moved and prepared spoke of a team that had already matured beyond the academy's classrooms. Night passed without incident. At dawn, the caravan creaked forward, birds flitting above. The group reached the low hills by midday. The sun created harsh angles and long shadows, the perfect place for eyes to hide. Kaito's heart thrummed like a warning drum. Then something moved, a sliver of cloth atop a ridge. Shikaku stiffened. "Hold," he whispered. It was a planned test of patience. 10 seconds later, 9. A net dropped from a ledge and a trio of silhouettes sprang out, daggers catching the light. Bandits. Not very professional, but dangerous enough when numbers favored them. The caravan jolted. His voice lowered. "And whoever this masked man is," Minato whispered, eyes narrowing. "I swear on the Hokage name, he won't touch our family." But he did not know. He had awakened a chain of events far larger than he ever intended. As the night deepened, a figure far outside Konoha watched from a distant cliff, a single Sharingan glowing through his mask. "Interesting," Obito murmured darkly. "Konoha is becoming more cautious. Did someone warn them?" His eye narrowed. "No matter. The night of the birth will be mine." The leader countered. Steel clanged. Kaito felt the old knot of anger, of loss and promises, rise, but he choked it down. He remembered Shikaku's words about choices. He would not fight for revenge here. He would fight to keep people alive. He rolled through a strike, palm charged, and formed the Rasengan in one well-worn hand. The spinning chakra met the leader's weapon and forced him back with a crisp pop. The bandit coughed, the arrogance gone from his eyes. Kaito didn't finish him. He knelt, sealed the man with a simple binding tag, and called Hotaru to check on the fallen. When the dust settled, the caravan's men were shaken but unharmed. None of the wagons were breached. And that wraps up today's episode of What If Naruto Had a Big Brother. Kaito's journey is only getting more intense, and the future of the ninja world is changing with every step he takes. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see what happens next, make sure to hit that like button, share the video with other Naruto fans, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Drop your theories in the comments. I love reading them. See you in the next episode.